So I don't think we have any newcomer here. So that will save us 5 minutes in the program. But maybe, as we have time and we are not too many, maybe each of you can say hello, who you are, from where you are, so everybody at least know where you are from and what you do, and can put a face and a voice on the face. So I am the intern on that program, and I am in charge of making photocopies. And Dr. Meyer, I am physio psycho researcher, teacher, professor, and a practitioner, and I take care also of clients. But I am based in Israel. I was born in France. My activity are mainly in America, where I have different offices. And if you ask me what I do, when I'm thinking about what I am doing in what I do, I'm helping people to change. I am really specialized on change, and I'm trying to bring change, on societal change. That's what I do, and that's what I do every day, and that's what I love to do, is to be a professional agitator and to agitate things to make improvement, because they can be better, and we need it to be better. So, Manana, tell us more about you.
Thank you. I'm Manana. I'm from Georgia. And I work across the borders of 3 fields: psychology, linguistics, and medicine. It's neuropsychology, it's psychotraumatology, and it's my latest inspiration, resilience studies. Namely, and more concretely, language of resilience, with the help of Dr. Meyer.
No. No.
That's all about me.
Despite Dr. Meyer. Okay, thank you so much. Let's continue with Georgia. We have Salome Brachuli? Okay, sorry to butcher your name.
It's hard to pronounce. Hello, everyone. I'm Salome. I have master's in political psychology. I graduated in Georgia, Georgian Institute of Public Affairs. And recently I started studying on the Gestalt psychotherapy course. It's a 5-year course, so I'm on my journey to become a psychotherapist. So that's basically it about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Mia?
Hello, I'm Mia. I'm also from Georgia, student, second-year student of psychology, also at University of Public Affairs.
Great. And you are the coordinator of our VUCAH as well group.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for all your good job. Let's go with Salome.
Hello, I'm Salome. I'm pursuing PhD in positive psychology. Currently, I'm teaching different courses in several universities, but mostly I represent Georgian Institute of Public Affairs along with my other Georgian colleagues here. So this is my, my primary research is related to resilience and to adaptation of one of the social emotional programs as provided by Professor Meyer. That's it.
Good. So obviously here with everybody here, I think we can say we are between friends. That's very obvious. Anna,
Good
Hello,
morning.
everybody. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted there. This is Nerida. Hi.
hi Nerida from Australia.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
I'm not putting my camera on. It's very, very early in the morning here.
Okay. So maybe you
Yeah.
can say who you are?
Oh, I've interrupted someone, have I?
No, she did not
Okay,
start.
go ahead.
So go on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's Nerida. I'm Nerida Saunders. I'm a consultant psychologist in Australia. And our business here in Tweed Heads, we have about 10 people and we focus on neuromodulation of the brain, all sorts of different techniques, and just trying to help people generally. So thank you, and really great to meet you, Gerard, and your work is phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you are also bringing us some new type of helmet to analyze and treat the brain. And
Yes.
you are really doing a fantastic job. What time is it for you in Australia?
It's 5 a.m.
Oy vey. Good morning.
Yeah.
Somebody say good morning before. Good morning. Okay.
I am still in my pajamas and I'm going back to bed after this.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It's a holiday today.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much to participate.
My pleasure.
Anna.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Jacome. I am from Ecuador. I am a clinical and forensic psychologist. I have a PhD in social sciences. I teach in 3 universities and I see patients. I no longer do forensic work. I am currently working on a self-help program for anxiety and depression. And I'm also working with Dr. Meyer, researching different tools for the testing of resilience.
Thank you so much. So, Isaac?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining from. My name is Isaac Garcia. I'm an Agile coach, so I work in the business-facing side of the Mental Wellness Society. We're looking at ways to adapt the evoke cards and those ideas into trainings that can be done inside of corporations and businesses to help elevate the awareness of the impact of a VUCAH environment on businesses. There's a lot of burnout, stress, and other challenges that we're looking to try to add some improvement to. So I'm dialing in. I'm joining from Texas in the United States. So it is not 5 in the morning here.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Update of our project. Manana, you have any update on the language of resilience? Maybe not yet. You are muted.
I was mute. Unfortunately, I had a very hectic period at the institute. And then I had some health issues. So I need some more time to dive into.
No problem.
Maybe a week or two. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect, great. Anna, I know you are working on the how to evaluate, how to measure, evaluate, predict resilience and stress. Maybe you want to say a few words about where you are. I know you have been busy, but you are working on it.
I am. I'm focusing first, like I told you, on the definitions of resilience because everybody has a different definition. So we are taking the definition from the material resilience and taking from there to try to understand what are we talking about when we talk about resilience. Are we talking about going back to the previous state, or are we talking about something different that happens, for example, with steel? You put it through a lot of stress, heat it up and hammer it, and then it becomes a lot stronger. So that's where we are right now, reviewing different papers, different definitions, and different tools, but nothing clear yet. And I also want to say that I don't know if Anunciata spoke. I think she's missing.
She's here.
Yeah, but I didn't
Annunziata,
hear her.
Annunziata, yes, I passed your turn. I'm sorry. Annunziata,
I'm Annunziata
prego,
from Rome,
prego.
Italy. Grazie, thank you. From Rome, I come from Rome, Italy, but I work in Latin America too. I'm a manager in an Italian company that work in coaching, especially in neurocognitive coaching. I work in the same time with VUCAH, that is a Bureau of Neuroscience, and we work together UMSA, that is Latin America, and it is a university based in Buenos Aires. VUCAH based in USA too, and I work especially to integration body and mind. And this is my.
And you are a fabulous researcher. And you write beautifully.
This is my passion.
Yeah, yeah. And you are a wonderful person. Because you have been starting with us at the Mental Wellness Society from the very, very beginning. So, I have some progress to report. Number one, we are working to develop in Israel a program to help with our different tools. Soldiers who return after the front, who return to normal life. And it's very interesting, they have problems that I have already seen with many clients in America, because to be a good soldier, you need to give up your internal locus of control. You need to do what you are told to do. But because you are told to do, you don't decide when you come out. You don't know how to decide. You don't know how to choose. It's very difficult to come back to active life. So we are developing a complete program and we have 100,000 at least civilians who have been in the war that we need to help. I'm not even talking about post-traumatic stress syndrome that some have, but I'm talking about helping people to become to their a normal life. And that program, when it will be done, will help also people who retire, for example, in the American Army. They are 45 years old, 50 years old. And the government is giving them money to become an accountant or whatever. And unfortunately, they don't know how to make decisions. And they have some problems. So we see that program to be very, very useful. So that's one element. Another update is one of our Ukrainian members, not of Reswell, but of the Mental Wellness Society, have contacted me because she finished after 4 or 5 years to create a program. It's a test. And the test helps to see what is your resistance to stress, to measure and predict, and including resilience. And actually, I'm taking that test tomorrow. And if it works, you let me know if you want to take that test, to try the test. I can have as many people we want to try the test. I know that Anna Isabel want to try it. But if you are any one of you, you send me in the website, you say you want to do it, but I've been investigating the concept on what type of, what have been I would say the architectural design of the system. And it's very good because it helps to measure, to put you in TV, and to see how much time it takes you to come back from TV. And it's a very, very interesting test, very interesting concept. I will do it tomorrow, and then I will let you know, but it might be the tool we were looking for to measure stress and it's on computer, to measure stress and to be able to predict your resilience to stress. So that's another interesting project. There is a conference in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, in July about resilience. And they are making call for papers. But the call for papers were until March 10. I spoke with the organizer. I will have a meeting with them on Monday. They accept to push the deadline. So if anybody has something to present at that conference, we can still be in time to present papers, to submit papers. And I will send you more information after I meet with them on Monday. So that's advanced. Out of that, all the other projects are, I would say, in the tube, but nothing is coming at fruition right now. Am I correct? Anybody have any other information? No? I'm correct in my assumption? Nothing is coming at this very moment. We need more time, that's all. It will take time. So, with that said, we would like to hear Salome, who wants to talk to us about positive parenting in time of crisis. And I need to make her co-presenter. Make co-host. Okay, Salome.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Wood. Nice to see you. Where are you from?
I am in my office at the university right now. I was a little slow getting back from teaching class. I was supposed to end it early and hurry back, but we got carried away with discussion about complexity and resilience and disaster.
Where is your university?
In Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay, good. Not too far from my office in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We used to live in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I still have an office in Pittsburgh. I have a clinic. Okay. So, Salome.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Can you put it full screen?
Yes, of course. So today I'm going to talk about positive parenting during crisis. And in today's world, where wars and man-made catastrophes are very frequent, as well as natural disasters, children are ones who are the most vulnerable. And understanding how crisis impacts children is very important in order to understand how can we make them more resilient. Most of the research is concentrated on adults. I mean, quantitative research at least. And sometimes children are the ones who don't get all of the attention that they need. So to understand the impact of crisis on children, it's not enough to understand the context itself only, but also how adults affect them during this period of time. So generally, children experience everything similar to what adults experience, but also there are some differences because they cannot make sense of anything that is happening around them, especially in the young age. And they are mostly affected by the impact of emotions and the way they interpret the world. Children mostly rely on adults for their care, empathy, attention, and understanding, but sometimes adults in crisis are not able to offer all of this to them, which traumatizes them even more and affects their levels of resilience. So during crisis, it's very frequent that emotional disruptions happen because children can absorb parental stress and their emotions. Attachments can be disrupted in those times, and all the traumatic events can lead to depression and anxiety. It's very important to start interventions early and use all of the tools available in order to assist children in such vulnerable state. But it is true that not everyone has access, like financial access, for example, to psychosocial interventions. And also very often there is lack of awareness or access for parents. So sometimes during the crisis, the situation is so tense that no one has time to think of kind of what specific needs of children are, and they very often aren't provided with them. So most of you, of course, know that there are 3 types of stress. It can be manageable stress, it can be toxic stress, it can be also positive stress. But considering that positive stress is not quite the focus of this presentation, I will concentrate on these 2 types. So in case of manageable stress, it's very natural for any living organism to have increase in stress hormones, and which eventually gets extinguished. So all the reactions we get in the time or in the situations that provoke our stress responses, eventually we have the moment when the fire inside of us gets extinguished. But during toxic or traumatic stress, this is not something that happens, and stress reactions may remain, as well as in adults and also in children. So if we focus on how stress influences, or distress in this case influences, brain of children, especially the ones who are not getting affection or attention from the parents, we can see that all of the important functions of the brain can get destroyed. So, I mean, the synapses might get destroyed in the process in terms of toxic stress, and the connections and bridges inside of us might not be built. So it affects child in different areas of development. It can be related to language development, to behavioral development, to emotional development, and etc. Most of the stress symptoms that people might have can lead to behavioral changes, as for example, aggression or self-isolation. This can be illnesses like eczema or somatic pain, and some more than this. Also hormonal changes or neurological changes. So stress symptoms, like toxic stress symptoms in this case, can be very disastrous for humans. And for example, in case of adults, when adult is stressed and is not able to manage it, it eventually affects a child. So it's important to be aware of how parental stress can influence child's behavior or child's experiences. In this case, we can see the increase in aggressivity and disrespect from the child towards parent, for example, the fear, the self-isolation, depression, and many other symptoms. So of course, these are not all symptoms, but some of them. And we can see how much child and parent can be interconnected with each other in this case. So as for some ideas for relaxation, obviously you might know a lot of techniques, but some of the few that are presented here are avoidance of stressors, breathing exercises, backward counting, muscle relaxation, fixed sleep schedule, and some more than this. But what is very important for the parent to understand that at some point their mental health must become priority. And it's important to put their own oxygen mask first, because their stress is having a very bad impact on the child and child's mental health. So if parent is able to manage the stressors around them, if parents are more resilient, then eventually children will be also more resilient. So it's important to help children in crisis situations. So the stress management of parents is one thing, but there are also other tips that might be important to discuss. So children might, I don't know why, I'm sorry, on this slide, the text is it was fixed, but unfortunately something happened to it again. I will just fix it here. So, as you can see from the slide, children often experience distressing memories and nightmares based on their experiences, for example, during the wartime. And in that case, they need assistance and help. And it's important to limit their exposure to violent media or to inappropriate language or information that family members might share at this process. So I want to recall Georgian experiences of traumatic events and of collective trauma. So there were a lot of negative events since Soviet Union was over. And so as you can see from the timeline, since the end of 80s and also in 21st century, Georgia went through a lot of wars. Like for the first stage, like in the beginning of 90s, I was about 5 to 6 years old. And by the last war that we have experienced, I was already, as I believe, about 20 or 21. And so I want to share my experiences from the position of a child, because the vision of the child might be very different from that of adults. And at this period of time, I remember a lot of unavoidable stressors that surrounded me, as well as avoidable stressors that could have been out of the picture. So basically, as a result of war, there were very bad social and economic circumstances that affected basic needs of the population. There were sounds of explosives, of shooting. And what was worse is that I was very aware that many friends of my family were shot in the streets, or some very negative events have happened. And obviously I have heard that of my parents, and I have witnessed their stress reactions or their conversations about the things that I shouldn't have known at this age. And also traumatizing stories of the family members and distant relatives who fled their homes and who have witnessed very disastrous massacre and horrible situations. But the child's mind kind of doubles and triples whatever it hears. So the sense of security is very shattered in this case. Also, sense of safety decreases. And when objective experiences are added to this, as being robbed, for example, or threatened, it has very negative effect on many levels of child's development. The younger the age, the worse. And so, except for that, schools also very often work as re-traumatizing environments, because the pictures depicting war, the history books, the permanent accent on tragedy adds to the negative effects that might be avoided in this case. So I don't think that these experiences lead to more resilience, because they are traumatic, because they break people in some sense, and the closer they are to the war zone, the worse, for example, in this case. And so whatever makes people resilient in this case are the accumulated positive effects and emotions. So whatever increases our resilience, or resilience of children, is not exposure to war, for example, or to tragedy. It is how other experiences that we might not notice in everyday life that are positive gather inside of us. For example, during this bad times in our country, the collective resilience and societal resilience, not societal, but community resilience was very high, because people were helping with each other, they were taking care of each other, they were providing food to each other, and the support that they could give, or they took care of each other's children, had some humorous events and moments when everyone tried to calm each other down. So these positive emotions, these social experiences might outweigh the traumatic experiences and lead to more individual and community resilience. So during the war and VUCAH crisis, it is true, and we must be aware of that families often experience separation during this period of time. The normal routines of children are broken down and daily life becomes very challenging. So the news that, especially now with access to any type of device or information, we are overwhelmed and scared by the news we hear, and our sense of threat increases all the time, whether it concerns the nuclear war, whether it concerns to situation in different countries. And so the risks are quite real, and we can kind of sense them in our environment, but the exposure to this information and being hyper connected in that sense makes things much worse. So as I said, the risks are always there, and especially for children, it might be very hard because they, like, for example, as I mentioned in my case, I had constant fear of my parents approaching windows because I thought that they could be shot any moment. Also, at that period of time, there were no phones and you never knew if your relatives were alive or not. Well, basically, right now it's better in that sense. So hyperconnectivity makes things easier too at some point because you can contact the people in any part of the world, and like internet helps us with that. But at times we just need to balance it out, our exposure out. And also the main problem of this VUCAH abbreviation, I think it's uncertainty that is caused by the situations. You never know what might happen tomorrow. And so even though children might forget about crisis-related thoughts, these traumatic experiences remain with them. So if their parents ignore their symptoms of stress, then children get into a vicious cycle. So they have difficult memories or nightmares. Then they just try to ignore and push away difficulties. Very often parents say very unuseful phrases like, just don't think about it, everything will be okay. Like in this case, we try to calm children down, but also we prohibit them from expressing their emotions, which makes things worse for them. So they just take their problem, hide it under the carpet, and it remains there, and it manifests itself in their dreams or their nightmares. And eventually they get the short-term relief that again leads to these difficult memories and nightmares, which become more intense and stronger because they are never addressed in that sense. So this is something that parenting should take into consideration too, especially during crisis. So what do children really need in this case? So first of all, they want to try to make sense of what is happening around them. It is impossible to help them to make sense of it, especially during the wartime, but still the need in this case remains. And also one of the most important things is that they want to express their feelings. They want to feel heard, and they want to feel validated and supported. So in case of communication, it's important to talk with children as it relieves tension and aids understanding. And also we must remember that they have challenges in communication. They cannot always express themselves. They might feel guilt, they might feel fear, and they just might not have enough verbal opportunities to put things and their feelings into words. So in case of effective parenting, like generally and especially during crisis, it's very important for parenting and the environment of the child to be predictable, stimulating, and affectionate. So as for predictable, even though there might be crisis situation, the return to the daily routine is very important. Having the routine, knowing when to wake up, when to eat, when to sleep, when to play is very important for the child, because it adds sense of security and sense of safety. Their daily life becomes less chaotic. They know what to expect, and whenever they follow this routine, they feel more under control than in the environment where there is no routine or no predictability. So at least it gives some type of predictability, which is important for child's normal development. Also, it's very important to keep stimulating the child. So in time of crisis, parents might be depressed. They might neglect some of the needs of the child that are beyond basic needs. For example, education. They might not take children to kindergarten, or they might not take children to school, or they might not let children go outside to play. And it's very important to help child in this period of time to stay active, physically, socially, emotionally, and etc., and also to remain educated, to have access to school, to have access to books, to have access to education that is appropriate for their age. So the more active child is during this time, and more child gets incentives and stimulation during this period, the better. Also, one of the most important aspects of effective parenting is expression of affection, whether through touch or through attention or communication. It doesn't matter how we express our love, but it's important to show that it is there and that it is directed at them. Sometimes we think that child knows that we'll love him or her. And so this is our view of it, and it's very subjective. But if we ask children, they might not be always sure about it. They need it to be shown, they need it to be expressed. They don't have abstract thinking until certain age, so they take things very straightforwardly, and if you don't express it, then it's just not there for them. So it's very important to express affection in certain way. So the golden rule is that children need and want adult love and attention, and they want it all the time, and they need any type of attention, whether through getting whether they get it through bad behavior or good behavior, whether it is scolding or praising, they just want any type of attention from their parent. And it's like in these hectic times, in VUCAH time, in stressful environment, in increased workload, or in time of crisis, it's very hard to constantly give attention. But having scheduled times that are only focused at child and that are oriented at having quality time with the family, or having family meetings, means a world to the child. And this is exactly this positive experience that adds to the resilience. So we must not focus only on crisis, only on the problem, but in this case, we must focus on the solution. And the solution is the barge of positive emotions or experiences, or the time spent together, and not the problem that occurs outside. So the basic of the communication with a child, or active listening, or allowing child to self-express, is connected with empathy, because being empathized makes child to feel safe and protected. It takes into account child's emotional needs and desires, so child feels as being important person. And also it has reverse effect too, because children become more sensitive to others and more empathetic towards other people. So whenever they are capable of helping someone in any way possible for their age, they feel both valued, they feel under control, they feel that they are making something good, they feel that they are kind, and it all positively affects their self-esteem. So whenever we not only provide children with examples of empathy, but also lead them to empathetic behavior, it is a win-win situation on both sides. So the thing that sometimes parents aren't aware of is that empathy is something that is with the child since very, very young age. So when child is 1 year old, they feel distress. When, for example, another child is crying or is hurt, and when they are about 2 years old, they are aware that others are different from them. And for example, they try to calm down the other child who is in distress. Between 5 and 6 year old, they realize the feelings, behaviors, gestures, expressions of others and make sense out of it. And in this case, empathy skills can be both good and bad for the child, because if child is very empathetic and very sensitive, then they can over experience the feelings of others who are harmed, for example, during the crisis. Or, for example, they may have very bad experience of how their parents react to stressful situations or to crisis. They might experience it even worse than it is for their parents, because parents are adults and they have more control, they have more awareness and more understanding. But when, for example, little human feels the pain of their caregivers, then it is like the end of the world for them. So in this case, parents must make sure that children do not become their own parents, that children do not become their caregivers, and that they do not share they don't overshare their problems with the child, even if it is teenager, even if it is someone who is in the beginning of adolescence, and especially the children who are very young and sensitive age. But there is a high tendency of that. Like sometimes parents think that this is good, and as if it makes children more empathetic, but in this case, it's not the thing that we are aiming for. So empathetic communication is not as easy as it might seem. And whenever, for example, I was conducting trainings with professionals, they had a very huge problem applying empathetic communication to their daily life. So when they listened to theory, it was very easy for them to understand. But whenever they were asked to practice empathetic communication at home, most of them failed, because they didn't empathize, they didn't feel it naturally towards family members, because they have some patterns of communication with family members that is very hard to break. So the first step of empathetic communication to be practiced and to be improved is understanding what the other person feels. In this case, identifying what does child feel. Sometimes we might think that they just don't care and they just don't want to do their homework, but in reality, they are very sad or scared or upset. And so identifying child's feelings and asking child, like, is this what you feel? Or I think you feel this, is it right? Is the first step starting effective communication and empathetic communication with the child. The second step is determining the reason of this negative feelings that child might have, which is followed by validating or honoring the feelings. And this is the step where most of the people fail, because based on my experiences as being a child or looking at the environment around me, whenever someone expresses negative feeling, there is tendency of toxic positivity when everyone says, okay, someone feels worse somewhere. People are dying and you are whining about something, or you just don't think about it and forget about it. You don't have to think, you don't have to feel this, whatever you are feeling. And so child, or even adult in this case, whose feelings are not validated, ends up feeling alone, judged, misunderstood. And of course, it adds to the negative effect of crisis. It doesn't help. It doesn't increase resilience. It doesn't make one feel supported or cared for or even important. So the third step is the most critical step in this case. And the fourth step is already related to action. In this case, we identify the feeling, determine the reason, validated the feeling, and in the end, we want to help child to cope with these feelings. And so with the help of the child, adults can brainstorm possible choices that are there. What is the choice? In our case, it would be binary choice, most probably. And so what is the choice from the situation? And also creation of the alternatives with a child and brainstorming these alternatives already makes one feel that, okay, I'm not caged. I'm not in the situation where there is no way out. So there is some way out. There is some way out, for example, to keep fighting, to keep brave, to help someone instead of self-isolating, to go outside instead of locking oneself, and etc. And so seeing these opportunities, seeing the chances for decision, it obviously increases the sense of control over the situation. And so some of the decisions might be better than others, but when the decision is made, it already gives sense of confidence to both child and parent in this case. What is very important is not to push the conversation. So we might want to follow all these 4 steps, but child might not be open to this conversation. It may be due to trauma, it may be due to child's personality, or the situation in which the conversation has started, but it's very important not to push and not to make it forceful, because it loses all its sense and purpose. And so most important thing in this case is to let know the child that you are ready to listen to them whenever they are ready, whenever they feel like talking or like sharing, but they must know that you are available to them. Maybe you are not available 24/7, but that you will find the time in the specific day, not next day, not next time, but whenever they feel like this. And so you open the space for starting the conversation. And also very important thing is to help child become more independent and to get informed about risks that are out there, especially during crisis, on the ways that will lead or help with the survival, on the way to make smart decisions and smart choices, and instead of kind of isolating, like totally isolating child from the crisis, it's important to give certain information that will help them to cope, or that will help them to survive in case something happens to parent. So certain information, some survival skills, awareness of the risks, and for example, the possible solutions or possible decisions that can be made in that situation can be really helpful. And so in case signs of the psychosocial distress are identified, it doesn't matter how it is manifested. It might be through nightmares, it might be speech loss, it might be violent behavior, it can be anything that didn't characterize child before the traumatic event. It can be anything that you can observe that is different than it used to be, and whenever you observe the child is not feeling well, is not happy, and tries to hide feelings or expresses negative feelings, it is important to consult someone who might have more awareness about their situation and to seek professional help when possible, even if these are volunteers. And also social and emotional learning can be really helpful in this case. It can be a course, it can be if course is not accessible for parents, it can be getting information concerning social and emotional learning. And so these building blocks might help children to become more resilient during crisis. So thank you for your attention and questions and answers if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
So, anybody have any question?
Well, I'm curious, since and first of all, really wonderful to hear everything you ran through. And it brings up many things. But the first thing that hit me was, how does the time duration of the stress, how long it is, how sustained it is? In adults, we know that part of this is about how the period over which stress happens. And when there's a release from stress, when there's a break, people are better able to handle periods of high stress. How does that work in children? Some of the events you were talking about had different durations. And so that was one question, is how does that factor into some of the patterns you were talking about?
Thank you for your question. There is no specific answer to the duration. It all depends on the situation. It can be one-time traumatic event. It can be constant stressors in the environment. So it really depends on the balance between environment and personality. Some children are more prone to get distressed, and some families can be dysfunctional even before the crisis occurs, or not have sufficient parenting skills. So it's, in the end, it's very individual. So we cannot say that how much duration it is in certain cases. Like the process for children can be the same as, very similar to that of the adults, and durations might vary accordingly.
So the other question I had was, you were mentioning about the parents' behavior influencing the children as they process stressful things. How do you determine when parents are trying to hide, but in fact the child completely understands what's going on, and the parents trying to protect them ends up being counterproductive, versus when and how, and you touched on it a little bit, when and how much you help them process what's going on versus how much you try to block them from direct information about it.
Yes, so in this case, we mustn't forget that children have very open fantasy, and sometimes when they hear something and don't see it, and children avoid them from seeing or understanding it, they can add some extra information which can make all these things worse in their imagination than it really is. So it really depends. In the end, I talked about giving certain life skills to the child and stimulating children. So in this stimulation, I also mean that they must not be isolated from reality. So some parts of reality must be with them. They can know. So it's basically about parents' choice. Like, parents are free to choose in the end how they will approach their child. If they are capable to kind of isolate children till the war is over and keep them, for example, in ignorant bliss, then it's okay too, because then they won't have unnecessary trauma. And as I said, that it's better to avoid exposure, for example, of children to media or to seeing more things that are necessary. But absolute isolation from the reality can also have negative effect. It also depends on the age of a child. So at certain age, children take some things more lightly. At certain age, they are more sensitive because they start to understand concepts such as death, such as, for example, trauma and etc. And again, I think that individual approach also is very important in this case. So in my opinion, keeping the balance is the best approach. Any other questions?
Any other question? Anybody?
Just very, if Salome, that was a beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, one thing that occurs to me, in Australia, we have a lot of people coming here from different war zones, and the children haven't been dealt with well. And they grow up, and as you said, they can be angry, and there's distorted wiring in their brains and things like that. And we get a lot of violence later on. And I'm just wondering what you would think would be a wonderful thing for us to do to help these people before they're just placed in a community that's suddenly safe. And it just seems surreal to me that we do that with people. And can we train them somewhere? Can we do something with these people to help them before we place them then in communities and the whole lot? Or what would you imagine would be the right way to manage this crisis? Because we have quite a lot of violence now here in Australia with these young people who've grown up and are wearing that anger from the horrible experiences they've been through.
Mm-hmm. For the children who have been through such negative experiences, it's really hard to get adapted and used to different environments, because even though negative, it was their natural habitat in this case. And the transition for them might be really hard because the aggression, the fear might still be recorded in their bodies and in their mental states. So in order to help them to kind of become part of the community and to integrate, if I understood your question in the right way, it's very important to use positive parenting techniques generally, as it has shown to be the most effective. And the major source that I used for this presentation, I'm not sure if you have seen it, it is freely available resource for trainers who help children in different types of situations. It can be delinquents, it can be people who have or children who have experienced domestic violence. It can be for children who have experienced war or were refugees and etc. And so this is the toolkit from International Rescue Committee. I'm not sure if you can see my screen right now. And so such trainings are already accessible, and they're oriented at any type of caregiver. It's not necessary for it to be the parent. This can be facilitators, this can be some of the representatives of different communities. And if this approach is used by everyone in kind of in sequential manner and in consistent manner, and if everyone surrounding these children are consistent, chances are at least higher that they can develop in a better manner, that their resilience might increase, that they might learn to control their emotions. And also social emotional learning can be really helpful for the children. So I think that the solution is to equip everyone with all the tools available. Like it goes both for adults and for the children. So whatever corresponds to their age and the information that they can process can be very helpful in at least moving forward. Maybe they cannot heal completely, especially if they don't go through the therapy or through certain interventions. But the goal in this case is to have some progress in comparison to the past situation. Nerida, I had bad internet connection, and I'm not sure if I have heard your question completely and in the right manner, and I want just to specify if I answered your question or you wanted to find out something else.
No, Salome, that was an excellent answer. Thank you so much.
Thank
I really believe if we can solve a lot of this angst and fear and, intergenerational trauma, if we can resolve that, we can actually help towards reducing wars. And because, when people grow up angry, that leads to more violence, more wars, all of that sort of thing. It's a bit idealistic, but I do think that there is an answer here. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really appreciated your presentation.
Thank you so much. And yes, finally, someone needs to break the curse because it's vicious cycle, and these children grow into adults who then affect their own children. So something needs to change. So whatever hasn't worked in past will not work in future. So the experiences must be shared and lessons need to be learned. And especially now, the hyperconnectivity can also be used towards the benefits. We have access to immense information. We have access to professionals who are ready to volunteer in certain cases, even if for someone these volunteers are not financially accessible. Many people do things for free, and these resources that are there need to be used to their maximum. So the focus on the resources is the main thing in this case, and not on the problem that people might have.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You too.
So I wonder, the focus on this has been the experience in direct zones of conflict. So there's sort of two parts to this. One is how does this apply to people in you can't really say less stress, but certainly different, because our world is changing. Whether it is sustained extreme weather events, weather seasons, breakdowns of infrastructure in response to these kinds of things, given other forms of stress in societal infrastructure systems. People I deal with often can get into resilient infrastructures in a way that's dry, because it's about, do these services, can we keep these services working under various conditions? But the lack of these services induces stress. And the events intrinsic to these systems and extrinsic are likely to have more breakdowns of important or vital services that people have. And how do the kinds of results you're talking about apply? Especially, I think this focus on the children's eye view of this and what the long-term consequences of that are, and the coping strategies is a particularly useful one, not just for the children, but for us to think about how we respond to stress and different kinds of extended experience of stressors as our lives change, as we would anticipate people are going to have to live through in various things. Extended dry spells where there's power shortages because of the lack of cooling water, because it changes the way you use water at home. And what does that mean? So you could say these aren't as dramatic or traumatic as experiences of violent conflict over extended periods, but they're still stressors. And we can still have dysfunctional responses or just, lots of interesting ideas you're putting forward about how to mitigate and help people through these experiences. And so it really makes me think about how we address that. Hopefully, given trends, one can't be always too hopeful, but that we have less of the traumatic war experience to deal with, and but we are certainly, given climate change and other things, going to have more disruption to normal important services that create stresses. And mitigation strategies like you started to outline could be very important there.
Thank you for your question. In this case, this approach is pretty universal because stress is stress, and it doesn't matter what our age is or what our environment or problem is. The reason that I called it crisis was that crisis is not always war. Like, war is the crisis, but crisis can be different types of crisis. It can be objective crisis, it can be subjective crisis, it can be crisis in the family. It doesn't matter. The perception can be as much intense even in normal life, where there are no wars or no dramatic problems. But still, like the concepts that I have mentioned, the approaches, the building of positive emotions, empathetic communication, affection, stimulation, and predictability, this is something that every one of us needs. We still want it, even when we are older. As for children, it doesn't matter where they are or in which environment they are or how much stress symptoms they have. Like this approach towards communication, towards skills building, towards improving social and emotional resilience, it remains. So the goal is not only to cope with a problem that has already occurred, but to be ready for anything that might occur in the future, to be able to cope in the future. And so these are the main building blocks. We don't need to have trauma in order to need this approach. It might be too late. So the earlier we start building our shields, the easier it will be to face the struggles or challenges that might occur, and they will occur most probably because our world, as you have mentioned, is changing dramatically, and a lot of things are happening. It can be natural disasters, it can be organizational problems, for example, it can be social problems. It doesn't matter what kind of problem we have. We need something inside of us to help us to remain resistant to anything that might occur. So I believe that this is pretty much universal approach that can be used in any type of communication.
I would like to say something about that.
Of course.
Resilience is not to resist.
Yes, I know.
Resilience is to adapt.
Yes.
And I think what we need to teach people at any age, starting young, is to know that something which happened can be dramatic, but it's not necessarily traumatic. And because it's like a domino effect. And we need to be able to not look at it in a negative way. And to learn to develop a positive attitude is a skill which can be developed. And many people don't realize that developing a positive attitude can be developed, can be learned. It's counterintuitive because we are mammalian, and mammalian are wired to see the problem. And then you are in flight freeze, then you have a tunnel vision effect. So the idea is to prevent you to do that. In Israel, I have found something which happened, which helped a lot of people not to end up with a PTSD. One question is to tell the people, what will you do when the war is over? And I teach that to many people every day. But when you ask somebody, what will you do when the war is over? You stop them to think about the time and moment of the problem, and you show them that there is a life after this moment. And then you help them to be more positive. So I think this is the difference, in my opinion, between social emotional learning, where you teach people to learn to deal with your emotion and in society, but social emotional resilience, which is the next step, where you teach children, but in order to teach children, an educator, a parent, need to learn what is social emotional resilience and teach them how to do it, because they cannot do it by themselves. So I think the very, very important element is to, in any situation, realize it's not forever. Realize that you need to project and look at when it's over. Whatever is a crisis, the crisis will not last. Well, actually, to be honest, if it lasts, you won't see it. but it's very important for people because it prevents a dramatic event to become a traumatic event. And this is something we can do, and we have the tool, and we can measure, and we know how to do it. That's my personal point of view. So, Salome, what do you think?
I agree with this vision in this case. Also, when it comes to positive outlook, I think that healthy pessimism can be also useful in certain cases. So not all of the negative emotions can be really negative for us. They also have their function and purpose for survival, especially during crisis. We still need mammalian responses at some point, depending on the situation.
A good point. But I think by doing social emotional resilience training, we train the children, the people, we train them to give them survival skill. And that survival skill is to prevent them to enter in survival mode. Because the survival mode is the old brain and it's flight, freeze. There is no prefrontal cortex, there is no judgment, there is nothing. So we can train to not enter and not to use the survival mode, but to use the survival skill to prevent to enter in that situation, which can be measured by staying calm, by breathing, there is different ways to measure that, but it can be trained. And it's something where you train the mind and the body, and we are back to the activity. Okay, I think everybody have to go. Any more questions? But it's exactly what our group is about, because you have described some situation, and we are working together to try to develop resilience for well-being. And I think it's something we learn, and as say Professor David Woods, the threats, the problem, the crisis are becoming bigger and more often, because we are in a VUCAH time anyway. That's why we need to develop better ways to help people to find new ways to deal with new problems, but not to use old solutions for new problems, but to use new solutions for new problems. So that's what our group is doing, actually.
And it's great what you covered. It makes me think of also what societies, as these tools you're talking about, and Salome has talked about, what society's responsibility back on a more systematic way to as periods of drama, as you said, rather than trauma happen, that sometimes society's response or lack of it or misguided ends up turning a drama into a trauma. Beautiful play on words there. And I think there's the emphasis on that we also have to see what can society do, because some things need some scale of impact, and that sometimes the trauma comes later because society doesn't help, and in fact can make things worse in response. I think there's hints at this from other areas of stress and trauma and recovery. But again, this is really wonderful, and I want to thank Salome. This is very useful, in the group as a whole, I find it very thought-provoking and actually optimistic. Not that we have answers, but the fact that we get together and talk about this and can see these trends makes me feel like the possibilities for growth and effective tools is high. And thank you. And I do have to run. So it was good seeing everybody.
Okay, bye-bye. Manana, nice to see you. Salome 1, Salome 2, Mia. It was great to see you. I think you did a very good job.
Thank you.
Very good. It's something to build on. And I think it's a good base of discussion. So there is different piece maybe that we can look on work further on different aspects that you mentioned. But one is big: love, showing love, loving, compassion at every age. And when the people develop compassion, compassion helps to survive. By helping others, we help ourselves. And if we teach that to our children, we make a society better. Just that. Whatever happens, you still need to find a way to help others. And by helping others, you help yourself. I think if we only teach that to the children, we already make a better world.